All right, now settle in, folks, and let me tell you a story. Have you ever been minding your own blessed business, maybe standing out on your porch, admiring how the late sun turns your rose bushes into a patchwork of gold, when bam, suddenly your whole world flips upside down? Yeah, well, that was me. One Tuesday, going from thinking about pruning my peace roses to being cuffed on my own front steps by a cop who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. All while my neighbor Janet Jenkins watched with this smug little smile like she'd just won the lottery. I'm Art Williams. Well, Arthur, but nobody calls me that but telemarketers, and I've lived on Sycamore Drive for almost 35 years, which is a lot of seasons to watch neighbors come and go, but I'll tell you, I'd never seen anything quite like what went down that spring. Now, Janet, she's one of those folks who treats the HOA like her own personal kingdom clipboard glued to her hand-teal blazer like a suit of armor, the whole 9 yards. Her husband, Doug, is a local cop, and if you're getting the sense there's a power dynamic brewing, you'd be right. My late wife, Sarah, God rest her, always told me, Art, your stubbornness is going to get you in trouble one day. Guess that day had arrived. Janet started off small, leaving notes about my grass 1/4 inch too high, or my granddaughter's wind chimes claiming they disturbed her peaceful afternoons, which was a joke considering she made more noise than anyone else on the block. But I let it roll off, trimmed the grass, moved the chimes, let her win the little things, because it seemed easier than arguing. Until that Tuesday. I was in the backyard knee-deep in crabgrass and sweat when I heard this banging sounded like someone trying to break into a piano with a crowbar. I rounded the corner, and there's Janet, hammer in hand, prying at my front door like she's auditioning for a home invasion reality show. Janet, everything, all right? You lose your key. I tried to keep it light, but she spun around, hair-flying, eyes wild. Arthur Williams, I'm performing an official HOA inspection. Your door is non-compliant and my master key isn't working. I just stared. Janet, this is Clearview, Ohio. Not Buckingham Palace. There's no such thing as a master HOA key. And you're gonna destroy my door. Her face went from sour to purple in a heartbeat. This is an official HOA matter. I have authority, she barked, waving that hammer around. I had to step closer, keep my voice steady. You need to put the hammer down, Janet. You're damaging my property. Go home before this gets out of hand. Well, that was it. She dialed up her husband, screaming about how I'd threatened her with a garden trowel, which was still somewhere out back. And before I knew it, Doug rolled up, cuffed me, and started reading me my rights like I'd just robbed a bank. And all the while, Janet stood there, arms crossed, that teal blazer gleaming in the sun, acting like she'd just restored order to the world. The humiliation, off the charts. Neighbors peeking through blinds, little Timmy Henderson gawking from across the street. Everyone saw it. So there I am, 50 yards from my own kitchen, locked in a police cruiser. And all I can think is, you know what? This is the line. This is the moment you stop rolling over and start fighting back. Doug paraded me through the station, tossed out charges like he was reading off a menu: assault, resisting, disturbing the peace. They never put me in a cell. Maybe even they knew it was ridiculous, but the process was humiliating all the same. I kept telling my side calmly to anyone who'd listen. Janet tried to break in with a hammer, made up this master key fantasy, called her husband when I told her to stop. The desk sergeant, a guy named Henderson, just shook his head and typed. What Doug and Janet didn't know was that my son David works dispatch for the county. He heard the call go out, heard his own dad's name, and put the pieces together real quick. Didn't pull any strings, but he started a quiet investigation, noting the times, the names, the obvious conflict of interest. After a couple hours, a detective named Miller finally talked to me, listened to my side, checked the evidence hammer, scratch marks Janet's story falling apart under the light. 20 minutes later, she comes back, says, Mr. Williams, you're free to go. No charges. I can't describe the relief. But the anger, oh, the anger burned hotter than ever. David was waiting in the lobby, jaw clenched. We're not letting this go, Dad. And I agreed. We'd start with a formal complaint against Doug, unlawful arrest, conflict of interest, you name it. And then we'd take a closer look at the HOA, the bylaws, Janet's reign of terror. See, as soon as the neighbors heard about my arrest, stories started pouring in, Janet fining people for garden gnomes for their dogs, barking for holiday lights being too tacky. Folks were tired but afraid to speak up. With her husband as backup, who'd dare? We started small gathered signatures to call a special meeting, demanded a full audit of the HOA finances. Got Mrs. Norma next door on board, a retired nurse with fire in her belly and a long memory for Janet's slights. The Parkers, the Changs, even Mr. Henderson with his basketball hoop, all of them signed on. Sycamore Drive was fed up. Meanwhile, Doug tried intimidation tactics, slow patrols, hard stares. An anonymous note in my mailbox: "Drop the complaint. You don't know what you're dealing with." If anything, it just made me more determined. I filed a Freedom of Information request for Doug's body cam footage, added the anonymous note to the growing pile of evidence, kept the wheels turning. Weeks dragged by. Internal Affairs called, interviewed Mrs. Norma, interviewed little Timmy. Both confirmed Janet was the one with the hammer, the one trying to get in my house. Meanwhile, Janet doubled down, sent me violation notices for the scratch she'd made on my door for my roses being too yellow. I kept everything complied to the letter, pruned. The roses, painted the petals beige just to make a point. David thought it was hilarious, malicious compliance at its finest. Finally, I got the call. Doug violated department policy, failed to de-escalate, didn't declare his conflict. Mandatory retraining, a formal reprimand, no firing, but it'd follow him. We sent a copy of the body cam footage to the city manager just to make sure it was on record. Word got out and suddenly other complaints trickled in. Doug wasn't the untouchable tough guy anymore. But the real reckoning came at the HOA meeting a Thursday night at the library, the whole street buzzing. Janet tried to control the room, but the tide had turned. David calmly asked for real financial records. Janet offered a single page of vague numbers. Mr. Abernathy, a retired accountant, called her out. Neighbors told their stories. Mrs. Norma and her dog, Mrs. Parker, and her gnomes, the Changs, and their recycling bin. Years of frustration all spilling out. When it came time, Mrs. Norma made a motion to remove Janet from every position, president, treasurer, head of the review committee. The vote was nearly unanimous. Janet's face, usually locked in that look of righteous command, went pale. She gathered her things and stormed out. Doug trailing after, no longer the enforcer, but a humbled man. Sycamore Drive breathed easier after that. The new committee, Mrs. Norma, Mr. Abernathy, Mrs. Chang, set new rules, real transparency, regular reports. No more nonsense fines. I went back to tending my roses, put my wind chimes back up. Janet became a ghost, her teal blazer gone, her drive-by inspections replaced by a half-hearted wave if she saw you at all. Doug started volunteering with at-risk youth, maybe realizing that power's best used to help, not harm. David and I had one last bit of fun up our sleeves, a little public send-off for Janet's master key obsession. At the annual neighborhood barbecue, we presented her with a giant glittery golden key, 3 feet long, inscribed, "Janet Jenkins, official master key to Sycamore Drive, use only in your wildest dreams." The neighbors howled with laughter. Janet blushed every shade of red. Doug looked like he wanted to crawl under a rock. She accepted it stiff as a board and walked away, the key bouncing against her knees. That "friends" was the exclamation point on her reign. So what did I learn? Well, sometimes the only way to beat a bully is to stand tall and let the community see the truth. A bit of humor helps, so does a well-drafted petition and a group of fed-up neighbors. My son's quiet strength and fairness kept me from going off the rails, and I like to think we made Sycamore Drive a little better. Now I sit on my porch, roses blooming, wind chimes tinkling, peace restored. Sometimes I think about that golden key, wonder if Janet kept it as a reminder or smashed it to pieces. Either way, she's just Janet now, not queen of the block. And you know what? Sometimes justice isn't a hammer. Sometimes it's just a good story told over a backyard fence or a comment section. So tell me, folks, ever had a neighbor try to run your life? How'd you handle it? Share your stories down below, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is letting the whole street in on the joke.